All right. Hello and welcome to this special broadcast. My name is Vineet Malhotra, and today we have someone really special joining us on the show, Mr. Muzaffar Ali. He's an Indian filmmaker, fashion designer, poet, artist. He's a cultural revivalist and a social worker, someone I completely admire and respect. Padma Shri, Mr. Muzaffar Ali joins us on the show. So thank you so much for being here and speaking with us on newsx for the long story short. Well, I'll jump straight away into the deep end. So, people still remember you as someone who was the creator and the man behind Umrao Jaan. Do you think that this masterpiece will outlive you? And that is something that all artists want, that their work should outlive them?
I, I'm sure, because once art becomes history and all relevant art, all relevant artistic journeys and expressions, they become part of history. Cinema has a very kind of powerful quality of becoming history, but unfortunately, the whole medium is going through a transformation from celluloid to digital. So that is really a lot of things have been lost in the process. But now with new technology coming to save the moving image and the images of the past, and people finding relevance in them, they definitely will become history.
Hmm. So you just mentioned that things are changing, things are evolving. We are in the social media age now. We are in the OTT age now. Your first movie was Gaman. I'm not sure if Generation Z or Generation X, Y are familiar what transpired in the 70s and 80s. Do you think that some of the work that you have done in the 70s and 80s while you made Gaman, you were still with Air India, if I can recall one of your conversations on YouTube. Some of the movies that you have made are classic and they will stand the test of time, something that doesn't really happen with the movies being made today.
See, music today, movies have become a kind of a commodity, a consumeristic kind of approach, and I think OTT is not a great savior of the film. It's an opportunity which you have to find yourself to get into, and I think they don't understand the responsibility of the cultural dimension of a film. The cultural and the artistic dimension of a film is very uh, non-commercial, and that is why it outlives time. If it's totally commercial, it is bound by the box office. It's bound by so many other areas where things come and go. So I think
Hmm.
today art is a very important aspect of cinema, and so these people were saying, "तो art film बना रहे हैं." I mean, that without understanding what is the power of art and what is the purpose of art. So I think Bombay as a ecosystem of creating uh, films is not very conducive to 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 filmmaking. More better films have happened outside of Bombay, in Calcutta, in Kerala, in other places like that, where people have gone into the film, into the culture, into characters, and made them timeless. Bombay,
Hmm.
everything self goes OTT.
So I also, sort of fleetingly ran through your book, Zikr, if I'm not mistaken. You mentioned a great deal about the influences that you've had in that book as well. You say that your father was also a great influence in terms of your career. Elaborate on that.
See, my father was a very evolved human being. He was a very progressive person. He had seen the world, and he knew which way India was going and which way it shouldn't go. You know what I mean? He fought the first election at the age of 30 in 1935 when he was just 25. And he fought the battle of being anti-communal. So he opposed the, the, the Muslim League and he defeated the Muslim League for 17 years. So I think he was a very broad-minded, open-minded, thinking individual. And from his standpoint, I could see art as a great social responsibility that a person of my predicament, my family, could extend to the world.
Hmm.
On one hand, I was an artist. On the other hand, I was from a feudal background. So both these combinations have their own kind of ego impediments, which I sort of surmounted, and that was because of him. If he didn't sort of bring me down to earth and didn't put me in my place, I might have just been a kind of a crazy, egocentric individual, which I think I'm not.
There's a very interesting thing that I read about you, sir, is that when you wanted to make your first movie, you were still employed with Air India, and that is something that you had to navigate. And you had quite a difficulty doing that. And as far as I recall, you also said that it's the Tatas who came to your rescue, saying that why can't you make a movie? Tell us
Yeah,
about that.
I think first of all, the film was very organic. It was not like a my foray into Bollywood or anything like that. It was a simple realization of who I am, where I am, and there are millions of people like me helplessly floating around the city, not knowing whether which way to go, being sort of the समंदर के थपेड़ों से वो इधर कभी उधर क्या कहते हैं फेंके जाते हैं. So I mean, it was, I think the Tatas realized that this guy has got his heart in the right place, and it was a very simple, organic, artistic process. I started. It took me time to write, it took me time to sketch, and my preparation. That made me realize how important it is to prepare for a film. So preparedness in a film is very important, and the fact I could paint, I knew exactly how to design the scene, the measure scene of the film, and the art of putting a camera. The art of putting a camera is a very big art, because you must realize that exactly this is the final statement. So the art of putting the camera came from my pen and paper and my sketchbook. So that way, I think people in Air India were very generous about this making of the film. In fact, the first show was held in my Air India auditorium, which actually I was responsible for designing also. And whole Air India people rallied behind the fact that अरे हमारे में से एक ने फिल्म बनाया जैसा भी है. और दूसरी चीज है कि वो also talked about the plight of the Maharashtrian, and that I think it resonated well with the with the basic Air India cadres. Even Bal Thackeray wrote very beautifully about the film. So the thing is that it just hit the right chord at the right time. So I mean, the fact that I was in Air India also gave me a little more confidence. If I was just a struggler trying to make a film, I would have had many, many more films. But I went to Bombay to work for Air India. And Air India for me was India. Air India for me was my way of looking at India and presenting India to the world. So, I mean, I had a different fire in me.
So you also rave a lot about Rahi Masoom Raza. I know who he is. I was born in the 70s, grew up in the 80s and the 90s. He influenced you professionally as well. He was a great man. Tell us about that time and how were you influenced by him professionally?
See, I uh, went to Aligarh, study science, and then I got drawn into poetry. And I think the Rahi was the kind of a great light, the horizon. He was people. You can't imagine the charisma of Rahi Sahab in Aligarh in 60s, 60s. So Rahi gave me. I mean, it was my passion to work with Rahi. In fact, Anjuman mein Rahi wrote the dialogues for me. And I've done a play also on one of his poems, Gomti. So Rahi was, I mean, I'm very, very association with Rahi. People may have met him, done millions of things with him, but I think he's been a game changer. And in Calcutta, I started Rahi's poem, कभी रोशनी की तलाश में कई मंजिलों से गुजरे, कभी रात ऐसी डरावनी कि हम आरज़ू से भी डर गए. So Rahi gave me a new perspective of seeing times, of seeing change. And I think at the end of it, he also got trapped in Bombay. Went there. he saw my film Gaman and he said, Gaman देख के मुझे भी लगा कि मैं भी गुलाम हसन की तरह अपने कलम की टैक्सी चला रहा हूँ. So he got trapped and he, I think, just faded out. But I mean, what man and his power over words was enormous. I don't think that there's people with that kind of a command over words.
Hmm. So you
So
made a
that
very
way, I mean, yeah.
Yeah. So you made a very profound and a very deep statement that art usually mimics social responsibility and social predicaments. Do you still think that art, as is we know today in cinema, has stopped doing that?
I can't make such sweeping statements. You know what I mean? अभी भी रोशन क्या है क्या क्या अभी रोशनी है, अंधेरा पूरा नहीं है, लेकिन हम कह रहे हैं एक इकोसिस्टम होता है, एक माहौल होता है जो इंस्पायर करता है. वो मुझे लगता है कहीं ना कहीं वो it's getting dimmed, झुलस रहा है. And I think at the cost of the emergence of the OTT opportunities, because I think people are looking at viewership and eyeballs, and they are using language the way, I think, probably it's a good thing to have abuses in a film and on this thing, but that is our culture. But to overdo it just to get attention is not the way to be.
Hmm.
Art, I think, has a big predicament, a big future, a big challenge, and you need to create a macro ecosystem to be able to make things happen. I mean, एक चीज आप करते हैं तो वो 10 चीजें उससे आपको नीचे ले जाती हैं.
So you mentioned OTT. How has that, apart from all the abuses that we get to see in OTT, how has that changed the landscape of Bollywood? If you compare it to, the era when you started out, and is it good for actors, directors, and artists that they have an
I think
OTT
everything is
platform?
good. There's no, you can't be so this thing. It is giving an opportunity. It is improving technology. It is providing talent opportunities. So there's no way of. I can only talk about myself and how soul devouring it is to approach for finance. Because they don't understand what the nuances of culture are. Because things have to outlive time.
Hmm.
So if I don't do something which will be remembered after me, there's no point in doing it. You know what I mean? I'm not doing it to make money or to live. तो मैं कुछ ना कुछ कर ही लेता हूँ.
Hmm. So you also spoke of the imbalance
लेकिन
in yeah.
अगर
So you also
yeah,
spoke about imbalance in nature and how this imbalance, uh, is also reflective in art itself. What did you mean by that?
see, the point is that an artist has to see has to perceive a very delicate equation of एक संतुलन होता है हुस्न में और इंसानियत में. वो बहुत important है. You be able to see the balance between humanity and aesthetics. That is really the most biggest challenge for an artist today. And the moment you see it getting disturbed, you know that it's going to get the better of you. You will not be able to save it. You can't just create something where there's a kind of a disbalanced system where people are not being able to balance their art with their humanism.
Hmm.
This is what I learned from my father. The whole the humanism part of life and I think the art part I got from my mother. So the balance between these two things become very important.
So what's your take on Bollywood today? Do you think that the culture in Bollywood today is very top heavy? It's the top names that get to decide and call the shots. The concept is not as big as the star.
See, I'm too small to address that situation, but I know one thing: my son is there. He's battling in Bollywood, and he's trying to create his own space. And now he's also trying to uh, recreate my film Zuni, which was got held up. So he's trying to, salvage all the negatives and try to create a narrative between what we shot, how we shot it, under what conditions it was shot, what was the larger kind of macrocosm of the insurgency, what brought the film to a halt. So I mean, people are thinking, and I think the thinking process, the questioning process, is very important for for the art. And I think Bollywood has little time for it. There are very few people who are spaced out and have in a timeless mode, like people like maybe Gulzar Saab, and these people are looking at art in a more timeless fashion.
So we almost reached the end of our conversation. The classic movie that you made, Umrao Jaan, was a huge, success in terms of the awards that it garnered, the memories that it created, and the attention that it got for, being holistically artistic. What do you think, as per you, sir, was the secret behind Umrao Jaan becoming such an eternal legacy in cinema?
See, there are two things. One is the going into the, I mean, here again, everything you've done makes a difference and adds value to what you're doing. So my whole understanding of geology, how soil, strata after strata, things are laid, and what the face of the earth we see, what it has below it. So that, I mean, I realize that film is a kind of the geology of the mind. Where you where you come from, what is the bottommost thing, what is the next thing. So you have to go into these layers of culture on one side, and the layers of artistry of in on one side, people like working with musicians on one side, working with designers on one side. So this was really you're adding value by understanding their capability and creating something which is going to be timeless. And everybody, I mean, people don't have that kind of time. I think I took about 2 years to do the music and lyrics of Umrao Jaan, which I mean, I don't think it's done like that anymore. So the thing is that it depends how much time you're willing to invest in a what shall I say, exploration. So the
Mm.
exploration is really the main thing of of create which marks one creative effort from another. So Umrao Jaan that way was about Lucknow. It was a culture. It was a city. It was the vulnerability of the city. It was the vulnerability of the time. So and that you were getting it in a very holistic, organic way, not like over the top way. The undercurrent of a belief becomes very important because you are really breathing that thing. You breathe. You've seen it change through light and shade of time. So you're bringing something new to the table,
The last
timeless to the table.
Yeah, absolutely, sir. Very well said. So, last question before we let you go. I know you have a paucity of time. So, you're in Delhi to attend the Chitashala event, which is organized by the Village Square, Transform Rural India, and its fourth edition. How did you become associated with this cause?
They found me out, and once I got into it, I realized there's a lot to them that meets the eye. There are a lot of people associated with it, a lot of young blood, a lot of thought going into it, and especially discovering country, discovering the craft for the country. All these things were big journeys for them and for me also, because I did a series of films on craft. We've done 18 films on craft per se. Besides using craft in all my films in a very kind of organic form of expression. So I think that brought us together, and I think they are very well intentioned, very well positioned, and I'd like to be part of something like that. Not that I can add much.
So, you've added a lot to this conversation, and I appreciate your time. And thank you so much. I'm a big fan and wishing you all the best. And thank you so much for speaking with us on A Long Story Short. Thank you so much, sir.